The Christmas Quilt by Vannetta Chapman, chapters 5 and 6. Sunday morning should have been relaxing, since this was not their Sunday for church meeting. Leah didn't have to hurry, which was a good thing. The babies felt as if they were fighting for space inside her stomach. Belinda had warned her that these last few weeks would be even more uncomfortable. Leah hadn't thought that would be possible. As she lay in bed staring around her belly at her ankles, she decided they were definitely less swollen than the day before. Maybe today would be better. Maybe the worst was behind her, and maybe she and Adam wouldn't argue again. Struggling out of the bed, she tried to picture the babies healthy and sleeping in their crib. With her hand, she caressed the mound that was her stomach. "You're worth every minute of discomfort," she whispered. By 11 o'clock that morning, she wasn't so sure. Her body was rebelling against her. It felt like a buggy she couldn't quite control as she tried to make her way around the house. Soon she found herself seated beside Adam on the way to Annie's. Beside him, but not next to him. He had placed the casserole bowl on the seat between them. Had he done that on purpose? Less than a year ago, he had always insisted she sit right beside him, tucked up close. Not anymore. She stared down at her feet, or in the direction of her feet. Her ankles had begun swelling as soon as she had started making breakfast, which he had eaten standing at the kitchen counter. Adam had tried to help her put on her shoes, but they had had no luck. That was when the first tears had started, and when he had first become frustrated with her. Who could blame him? She weighed nearly as much as the heifer in the barn, and she acted like a calf, bawling at the smallest thing. "Think anyone will notice I'm wearing shoes with no laces?" she asked. They were halfway to Annie's. She wanted to stay home, but he had insisted that she come to the family luncheon. Maybe, just maybe, he did want to spend the day with her. "My family," Adam snorted. "If there's food on the table, chances are they won't notice what's underneath it. Unless one of Reba's animals gets loose." Adam smiled, and some of the tension in Leah's heart loosened. It'd been a while since that happened. Once she started helping at the veterinary office in town, I believe she stopped placing critters in her apron pockets. Leah stared out over the fields they were passing. The weather had turned colder, and it looked to her as if snow might be threatening. She was ready. Snow meant Thanksgiving and then Christmas. Soon after Christmas would be the arrival of their children. "I should have made something else to bring. My bowl of pudding hardly seems enough considering all the people who will be there." "You worry too much." The words came out sharply. "No one expects you to cook at all with the Bopley nearing their due date." Cooking was the one thing she could still do. Leah thought of mentioning that to Adam. She almost brought up the fact that long hours doing nothing but knitting weren't necessarily a blessing, but she bit the words back. The last thing she wanted was to argue this morning. This was Sunday, and though Adam's time in the barn had cut short their Bible study, she wanted the rest of the day to go perfectly. Some days she found herself so bored she thought she might go crazy. She realized complaining about too little work was narish. In the old days, before she was pregnant, she'd go to the barn and help Adam. The last time she tried that, he shooed her away, telling her she might get hurt out there. Leah cleared her throat. "I meant to say I should have prepared something more last night, since I had the time. If I had known you weren't going to make it in to eat dinner, maybe I could have focused on baking a cake. Or do not start on me again about last night." "Adam, I wasn't." "I cannot help it if sometimes things don't go as planned, Leah. The engines, they don't always work once I put them back together, and you know we are barely making it with the money from the crops." Leah stared at him. stared at this man it seemed she didn't even know anymore. Where was her Adam with his easy smile and carefree spirit? The Adam who had taken her for a picnic on the foundation of their home before the walls were even finished? Tears spilled down her cheeks, and though she knew she should let it go, she couldn't help asking the question that had kept her tossing and turning until the wee hours of the morning. The same question they had argued about last night, the question he had yet to answer. And is that why you had to leave so late in the evening, Adam? Because of your engines? I'm asking, not accusing. Worry, insecurity, and exhaustion caused the words to stick in her throat, but Leah pushed forward. She didn't want to worry over this all day. I'm asking because I didn't know if I should keep your dinner warm or throw it out. I didn't know if I should stay up or go to bed. What am I supposed to do when my husband hitches up the buggy and takes off late at night? Can you tell me that? They arrived at Annie's house, but Adam had stopped their buggy halfway down the lane. I don't want to fight again today. He picked up his hat, glanced at her, and resettled the hat on his head. Please, it's the Lord's Day. I know carrying twins is difficult. Do not blame this on the Boplin. Adam closed his eyes, and she knew, absolutely knew then, he couldn't stand the sight of her. Did he need to shut out the image of her completely? Turn around, she said, trying to sound firm, trying to sound like she wanted to spend the entire day at home alone. What? His eyes opened and he gawked at her as if she had sprouted corn out of the top of her head. Turn around. I want to go home. No. Yes, I want to go home. Well, you will have to walk because I'm not taking you. When it seemed like they would glare at one another until the snow began to fall, Adam added, You don't always get what you want, and now is not the time to throw a tantrum like a child. She had been leaning forward, gesturing toward the reins to make her point, and the word tantrum she pulled back as if he had slapped her. Adam's jaw clenched, and he snapped the reins, signaling to their pretty black gelding to continue down the lane. Yeah, we'll be staying, and you'll act like a happy frog, whether you feel like it or not. I might not be able to satisfy you in any way, Leah, but we won't be upsetting our family over this. They have enough worries. She stared straight ahead as he directed the gelding around the bend and into view of Annie and Samuel's home, a picture-perfect house with 2 stories. A garden bed, neatly cleaned for the winter, surrounded the front porch, and to the southwest, tucked behind the house, sat the traditional red barn. Leah peered ahead. She could barely make out Annie and Samuel walking from the barn to the house, arm in arm like 2 young people still courting. Annie, who had married a man over 10 years her senior, a widow with a broken heart. Is that why they were still in love? Because he had suffered so much? And Annie had spent her time away among the English, earning her nursing certificate. It was a career she had gave up to come home and nurse her father. That had led to her joining the church. She seemed so content now. Perhaps after her time away, she more fully appreciated being home. Annie wasn't the only Weaver child who had spent time away on a Rumspringa. Adam had too, although he never spoken of it in detail. Sometimes Leah worried he would rather still be there, where life was easier, where he wouldn't have 3 additional mouths to provide for. Adam brought the buggy to a stop near the back door. When Samuel heard them, he hurried turned with a smile to help her out. For a moment, a fleeting second or less, she thought something passed between Samuel and her husband. It seemed they shared a look of concern, for the smile almost slipped off Samuel's face, or she could have imagined it, because then he was at her side of the buggy, helping her down, smiling and laughing as he accepted the casserole dish from Adam and helped her into the house, pretending as they were there wasn't a thing in the world wrong. Leah tried not to glance as she set her huckleberry pudding on the kitchen counter. Her dish was so small and insignificant among all the others. A sigh escaped before she could stop it, but Annie seemed not to notice, or pretended not to notice. "Berry pudding. Are those from the patch in your south field?" "They are. We put them up in the summer, and I made the pudding after we got home from town yesterday." "You should have rested. I know everyone will love it, though." Annie scooted around her, placing her hands on her shoulders as the door opened again and her parents walked inside. Jacob Weaver's face lit up when he saw her. Leah knew that her father-in-law loved her. There was no faking some things, and the grin on his face was genuine. "It smells wonderbar in here," he declared as he set his cane by the door and made his way across the room. He still walked with a slight limp from the buggy accident that had happened 3 years earlier, the disaster that had brought Annie home and brought Annie and Samuel together. Leah supposed it was a case of what had been meant for evil, God used for good. Thinking back to that time caused her heart to ache. She glanced up and across the room, saw Adam talking to Samuel, and laughed at something he said. Things had been so natural between her and him then, before they wed, before the babies. She'd spent months looking forward to being a wife and a mother. Now she was learning that sometimes life was nothing like what you expected. "You're looking very good, both of you," Jacob hugged first Leah. "How are my favorite girls?" "Dad, I thought you said I was your favorite girl." Reba stuck her bottom lip out in a pout as she set a plate of cold chicken on the counter. She was still tall and awfully thin for a 17-year-old girl, but any outside markings of a tomboy were gone. Now the quietness and beauty about her was hard to ignore. Leah had noticed how she had changed at church meeting last week. When Reba walked by a group of older boys, they had stopped talking and stared after her as if she were new to their community. One had shaken his head and blushed all the way to the rim of his hat. Reba, in keeping with her natural inclination to be clueless around two-footed beasts, had seemed oblivious. "Didn't you," Reba teased, sneaking a piece of cheese from one of the plates, tell Annie you did call me your favorite last night?" "Yeah, I suppose I did," Jacob admitted. "Just now I meant she and Leah are my favorite older girls." Reba laughed and moved to the living room where she proceeded to corner Samuel. Leah heard the words poultice and herbs, then mare. Samuel walked over to a shelf of books, selected one, and handed it to her. The room filled with conversation as Charity described her latest buggy ride with David Hostetler, and Rebecca remarked on the pudding Leah had brought. The back door opened again, and the gusting winter wind nearly tugged it out of Uncle Eli's hand. Uncle Eli, Jacob's brother, stepped inside with Rachel. She had apparently accepted a ride with Eli, though Annie confessed she had feared Rachel would change her mind and not come after having been married to Adam over 2 years. Leah felt as if she knew Eli well, but she couldn't have told anyone a lot of details about him. He was one of those people you seem to have known all your life, and she probably had. He had lived in their district for as long as she could remember, but she had been a child, and he'd have been an adult. I've got to turn the lamp on. It was getting hard to see. Now, after she had joined the Weaver family, he'd become her uncle, plain and simple. He'd accepted her as if she had always been part of the family. She still didn't actually know anything about him, though. He was merely Uncle Eli, a sweet old guy who loved to make toys, nearly always had a twinkle in his eyes, and didn't seem to have a harsh bone in his body. She wondered for a moment if he could fix the problems in a marriage, if maybe she should go and talk to him next week. That was ridiculous, though. He had never been in a relationship as far as she knew. She pushed the thought away. Eli wasn't as old as she had first thought, maybe in his early 40s. When she had once asked Adam why he had never married, Adam had shrugged and said maybe he never met the right gal. The right gal was certainly not standing next to him, removing her coat. Rachel Zook might be beautiful and she couldn't be over 30, but she was not marriage material. How old was she? Leah would never even think of asking. She wasn't exactly scared of her, but she wasn't foolish either. Rachel had the prettiest skin of any woman she'd ever known, other than maybe the English movie stars, and Leah hadn't known any of them personally. She had seen them on the front of magazines as she waited in line to check out at the larger discount store. But the frown on Rachel's face, it seemed carved there. Today she wore her customary gray dress and black apron. Did she ever wear anything else? And why? Was she still in mourning for her husband who had passed 3 years ago? All these thoughts flitted through Leah's mind in the time it took Eli and Rachel to walk into the room. Rachel's 2 boys tumbled in from the cold, but Leah barely had time to focus on them. Her attention was completely on Eli, who made no attempt to conceal his argument with Rachel. "Course I can read." He took off his hat and knocked it against his pant leg as if snow was on it, which it didn't. Eli was tall and had managed to keep fit, though he had no fields to speak of, but rather a small garden. His light brown hair had a tinge of gray to it, and he sported no beard since he had never been married. Around his eyes the wrinkles were beginning to show, but who noticed? He had the kindest, bluest eyes Leah had ever seen. "You seem confused." "I am confused." He didn't move out of the doorway, and Rachel had to nudge him a little so she could close the door. She let out a sigh and shook her head. "I don't have time for this. What exactly is your problem?" "My problem is that you've doubled the cost of the toys I sell at the store. People won't pay that much." "Of course they will. It's ridiculous. But they will because it's Amish woodwork. I'm running a business, Eli." She stopped and looked around as if she were seeing the group for the first time. Everyone had fallen silent. "I'll tell you they won't. And I didn't make those toys so they could sit on the shelf. I made them for children." "Eli, those are the prices I've decided on. Leave them in the store or take them someplace else." "Where?" "Not my problem." Rachel turned around, searching the room for her boys, content when she saw them seated at the checkerboard. "That's all you have to say? It's not your problem?" Eli's voice rose in frustration. "It's not." Jacob cleared his throat and limped toward them. "Perhaps today isn't the proper time to be discussing business matters." "One moment, Jacob." Eli turned back to Rachel. "Bontrager never raised my prices without consulting me. As you're aware, Bontrager doesn't own the store anymore. I own the store. What if I take a smaller commission and you return the prices to what they were previously?" Rachel closed her eyes. "I fail to see what difference it makes to you. Your profit will remain the same." "It does make a difference because I tell you they won't sell." "They will, and I needed to change my price structure for business purposes, which I don't expect you to be able to understand." Her hand came out and she dismissed him with a wave as she turned toward the main part of the room. "Trust me when I say Englishers will buy anything. I hang a man-made by honest sign in front of it. They're even buying those horrid knitted booties Leah makes." Eli gaped at her, but Rachel didn't notice. She was searching the room for Leah. "There you are, Leah. I need more of your knitted booties if you manage to finish any." Leah's mouth opened, though she was too stunned to say anything. Fortunately, she didn't have to, because at that point, Adam stepped forward. Chapter 6. When Adam stepped... Let me stop. Okay, I'm going to stop. I'll read chapter 6 in a little bit.